Good afternoon. Well, at least it's afternoon here in cloudy Beaumont, Texas. But Doug Fair here with the extreme pleasure of introducing or reintroducing Claire Huangci, who will be coming back to us and dazzling our audiences, this time with Robert Schumann's wonderful piano concerto, led by Maestro Tipton and the SOST. The purpose of my being here is simply an introduction, so I will bow out and let you all enjoy a wonderful conversation between these two people. Take it away.
Great. Thank you so much, Doug. Claire, it's great to see you. Happy New Year to you. We're so excited about your return to Southeast Texas. You know, where are you now and what are you doing wherever you are right now? You're a world traveler.
Well, it seems like that because I'm always in Europe. I mean, it's kind of my base, but for the most part, I have been in Europe with a couple of family trips, also going to the US, of course. I'm currently in Frankfurt, which is kind of where I make my base. Let's see, well, Happy New Year too, Chelsea. I am thrilled to be coming back to Beaumont to perform with SOST. It was a real highlight for me last time when we performed the Grieg. And actually for me, Grieg, it's almost like a stepping stone for Schumann. So I'm really excited about this. It's been so far this year, it's, you know, everywhere we're having quite some COVID cases, and I even got it. So I'm a recovery now, I can say. And I caught it like really right after New Year's. It was like January 3rd or something. I got a positive test. It was like, I was actually on my way to fly to the US and I had to take a test before the flight, and then they were like, "You're positive, like please leave." And I you know, I actually didn't have a very strong reaction on that day, because that's why I took the test without thinking anything would happen. But then there were 3 pretty rough days with fever, sore throat and stuff. But I'm happy to say within a week, I was completely like back on it. And yeah, now I feel good because I'm boosted and also recovered. So
wonderful. You know, I think I always get the question for me, like, what does a conductor do? And what is your week like? What's your day like? What, you know, it's kind of an unorthodox type of life. And it really does change from week to week, whether you have it's a concert week or we're between concerts. What do you do? And I think I wanted to pose that question as a solo artist. What is your typical day like? You know, because I think sometimes the audience thinks you just show up for the concerts and you play and it's all perfect. But no, there's a lot of steps that go into it. What is your typical day or week like for you?
Well, a lot of it depends, of course, on the schedule. So I'm one of those people, I'm like a procrastinator. And so I typically do good work under pressure. When there's like a concert coming up in 2 weeks and I'm like, okay, now's the time for me to really get down and do it. Whereas if a concert is in 2 months,
right,
I'm sitting around watching TV. And so I'm kind of like a little too normal maybe. I sleep pretty late. So a lot of people, they say like musicians were night owls. We study or we practice. That's not really what I do at night. It's more like lots of TV and reading some novels, fiction books and stuff, chatting to people. And then in the morning, it's a very relaxed time because we don't have to go to work exactly. I have a piano in my apartment. I'm actually allowed to practice all the time. My landlords, when I first got the apartment, they were like, "Oh, so tell us, how much do you practice a day?" And I was like, "Yeah, maybe 4 hours a day." They're like, "Okay, that's okay." And I have to say, unfortunately, I never hit that 4-hour mark. It's usually a half an hour, maybe 1 hour, another half hour. So it's like I take breaks, lots and lots of breaks. Of course, also during the day, what I do is many times you're listening to music, like you're getting inspirations of other pieces. Living here in Frankfurt, we actually have a very nice selection of like the opera, museums, different cultural attractions. And I try to take advantage of that as much as I can. But I think it's pretty relaxed for the most part. I practice on average 2 to 3 hours a day. 3 hours is really kind of the top max. But the rest of the day is really spent kind of like wellness. I do a little bit of sport. It's really something to keep fit somehow.
Yeah.
I think more so as a conductor for sure, because I think that just takes a lot more stamina. I actually, couple years back, so before the whole COVID thing, I had the chance to direct a Mozart concerto. So it was 2019, and it was only one movement. So in the end, if you think about it, it was like a 15-minute piece, but I have never sweat that much in my life. And I realized, how bodily involved you are to direct anyway, much more so than I imagined playing piano.
Because I think a big part of what we do as artists, it takes discipline. It takes discipline, and it takes, you know, I find it hard too when I don't have a concert coming up to just, I have friends who are just like, oh yeah, this summer I just studied all the Brahms symphonies just for fun, you know, or all the Beethoven symphonies, or last week, you know, unless I'm conducting it, I'm not really studying it. And that's kind of just the way it is. But that kind of, you got to kind of create your own routine.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, you're right, time can just kind of just blow by, but you got to get the practice in the wood shedding and everything. And that's what I tell young people a lot as well. You have to get in there and you have to make it happen. That's great.
Yeah, I would also say, like, during COVID, we had like to practice that really more, because of course during COVID, at least the last year was not last year, 2020. I'm thinking of 2020, it was pretty brutal. I mean, there were a solid, 4 or 5 months with nothing. And I remember, you have this determination. I spent most of my lockdown at home, actually in the US, with my dad and my sister. And I was so grateful because my dad and sister, they were working from home all the time. So I actually couldn't literally sit and do nothing because I would feel guilty watching them work. So without them, I don't know. If I had been in Germany, I probably would have not done it. But because my dad was there, kind of like, get up, like maybe practice, I actually managed to do something, and I'm so grateful for that. A little bit of discipline.
Well, let me ask you this about our concert that's coming up with the Brahms and the Brahms Symphony No. 3, and also the Schumann Piano Concerto. From a pianist point of view, what are your thoughts on the Schumann Piano Concerto? It's one of the staples, one of the masterpieces in the repertoire. What are your thoughts on that? You've played it before, I assume. I
have. And as I had mentioned earlier, I think in itself, maybe just because of the keys, it's also in A minor, like the Greek concerto. I always found that both are extremely melodic. They have these melodies which will stay in your head, will stay in your ears. That's one thing. And of course, also the second movement is quite short. And then the third is this kind of like tour de force. So that is the similarity in that, the first movement being quite lyrical with a grand cadenza. For me, the Schumann concerto is extremely challenging in that it's not so much from the technical facility kind of thing, but it's rather the interplay with orchestra. There's so many moments where the piano is accompanying, or it's just providing some colors. And then there's like some beautiful duets with the woodwinds and the orchestra or so. And in the third movement, I mean, there's just a lot of rhythmic things where to get it really locked in, I mean, you have to breathe. You have to be on the same pace with the orchestra all the time. And so this is like a really, it's much more like playing chamber music than a concerto where you just feel like, just follow me, And I think that's also what makes it really fun. So I'm also a very passionate chamber music player myself. So this is something where I think you'll really get very close with you, and also with the orchestra. I have to like look at the cello sometimes for the beautiful melody in the second movement. And there's just a lot of things where I think people can listen and be like, yes, we're listening to much more than just, piano, tutti. It's not like that. It's just constant interplay.
That's one reason I'm so glad we get to play this piece with you, because it is a conversation. It's not that the orchestra has to be a shadow. There are times the orchestra leads, times where the orchestra is accompanying, but it really is like chamber music. One of the concertos that I'm not as much of a fan of are the Chopin piano concertos, because it really is, the orchestra is just background, and trying to keep the orchestra engaged in it, because he wrote it so he could show off. He wrote it so he could.
Of course, really exactly.
We're kind of like a shadow, but this piece, it really is more of a type of conversation.
Exactly, exactly. And I think Schumann was great at instrumentalization as well. So the way I mean, I love also his symphonies, and he had some beautiful songs, and you can hear that he's a master of that. He knows the instruments well.
Well, you know, there is a close relationship between Schumann and Brahms. There was a big influences. Who's been the major influence for you as a pianist?
Well, I've had so many. I think probably from my younger years, like when I was just starting out, I would have to say Martha Argerich, simply because when I was about, yeah, 6, 7, beginning, she was the pianist on the only female pianist. And now of course there's more, but she can like outplay anyone. And I actually heard her once live, and it was it was an open air concert in Philadelphia, and everyone was out there with their pizzas. And if you think about the kind of playing an open air when you're playing for 20,000 some people and being able to captivate young kids like me, it's really quite a feat. And she was playing Liszt Concerto No. 2. I'll never forget it. I was such a fan. I like got a lot of her albums, and I tried. When I moved to Germany in 2009, I was much older, and I tried to see her concerts whenever I could. And there has never been any kind of anything where there was mild disappointment. It was always like a stunner. Of course, there are many others too.
It's interesting. One of my big influences was Daniel Barenboim, and who's a pianist, and they were together for quite a while. Argerich and Daniel Barenboim, great pianist, great conductor, of course. That's who I. Yeah. But yeah, it's funny. It's funny how these musicians, they can really impact us and capture our imaginations at a very young age. Do you do any teaching or anything like that?
I actually, it's some news, but from October this year, I will be a professor in Weimar in the Liszt Music University.
Wow.
And I'm pretty excited about that because it's a totally new chapter, I would say. I have been teaching, I've been assisting my professor for many years. I actually stopped in 2020 during COVID. That's when I moved to Frankfurt, so I stopped that. But I had 5 years of teaching his class, and I enjoy it very much. But it's another thing, of course, to build your class, to actually take 100% responsibility. You know, when you're assisting someone, you give them your guide, you guide them a little bit. But when you're starting off like with repertoire, and also in the Liszt University, we have like a special school where it's promoting young kids. So maybe some kids coming from the age of 10 or 11 who are gifted and their parents want them to become musicians. So this will be really interesting. I'm very excited about this.
So we are so excited about having you to return to Southeast Texas with the Symphony of Southeast Texas. And you know, this will be my first time conducting the Brahms and conducting the Schumann as well. So it'll be a new frontier for me. And I know the orchestra is very excited about your return. We want you to travel safe, stay healthy, and we look forward to having you to join us on our February 19th concert at the Julia Rogers Theater. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to having you here very soon.
Thank you so much, Chelsea. I can't wait.